Sgiath Gabhra, which roughly translates as the shield or defence of the White Mare, is the rather evocative medieval name given to the inauguration site of the Maguire Lords. Now we believe that this site at Fermanagh overlooking Lisnaskea is the location of that celebrated medieval site. Throughout the medieval period, it was commonplace for the Gaelic lords to carry out many of their most important functions at open-air assembly sites. Probably the most auspicious and significant event that would take place at these sites would be the inauguration of a new chieftain. Now, any site that was chosen to be an inauguration site would be one of great resonance throughout the society at the time. When you walk onto the hill of Fermanagh, your eye will be drawn to the massive central cairn. This is in fact a stone cairn which has been covered in grass in later years. On top of the large grass-covered cairn, there is a smaller cairn of stones which in earlier times was much greater but has been denuded. We therefore have a two-tiered mound, with a smaller mound placed on top of the larger. And this is something that is seen at other Gaelic inauguration sites such as Rathcrogan and Knockadoo in County Roscommon. Now we know a little bit about the inauguration ceremonies of the Gaelic lords, and often what they would do is elevate the new chieftain above all others during the inauguration. Now at certain sites such as Tullahogue in County Tyrone, this would have been done on a stone chair, but on other sites this was simply done by placing the chieftain on a stone mound on top of the larger mound. This is probably what was done at Fermanagh, and indeed if one takes a look around from the top, one can imagine the chieftain standing on the elevated stone mound on the top, surrounded by those attending at the ceremony, with all of the invited dignitaries and vassals in the area surrounding the giant cairn. Adjoining the central cairn on its eastern side is a second earthwork that is much less conspicuous in the landscape but can be traced with a careful eye. This is a significant henge monument. We consider this a henge because it consists of a large outer bank with an internal ditch, suggesting that this had a ritual rather than a defensive function. When we find two circular or subcircular sites such as these conjoined, archaeologists would call this a figure of eight arrangement. Now this is an arrangement that is quite auspicious in that it occurs at certain of the ancient royal sites such as Tara, but also on some of the Gaelic inauguration sites such as Knockadoo. The large outer enclosure of course surrounds both of these more central monuments. We do know from Neolithic sites such as the Giant's Ring that quite often an ancient necropolis or passage tomb could be surrounded by a large enclosure. It may therefore be that while the remains on site today of the circular enclosure are later, that this is following the line of a pre-existing enclosure that was here certainly in the time of the inaugurations, and possibly even earlier back to prehistoric times. The probable fourth element of the inauguration complex may be represented by a field system which runs up to the eastern edge of the large circular enclosure. This may be the fossilised remains of a processual avenue associated with the inauguration ceremonies.